another Tuesday around here and a testimony that you do not want to miss. We have Whitney here. She's kind of local to us. She's in the Hallsville area. I worked with Whitney. That's kind of how we got connected. And you guys, if you need a testimony or just a spirit-filled story of how to keep the faith and find God's grace through the trials and testing that we know that we're going to experience on this side of heaven, then Whitney's going to have it right here for you. So mamas, grandmas, your heart will be touched today. So come on in and say hey to us. As always, use the chat. We love to see who's live now. The text just went out. And so if you got the text, hop on with us. Many of you catch the replay, so you're probably catching the replay right now. And if that is you, please use the chat to give Whitney some encouragement and just use that so she can come back in later and see what you guys are saying. Okay. So without further ado, Whitney, first of all, who are you? Just introduce yourself real quick so we know who you are.
So my name is Whitney Myers. I am a former teacher at the primary. I actually am currently the Minister of Children and Families at Rocky Fork Fellowship. That has been something that's been on my heart for a while, and that's a transition I just made a few weeks ago. So I'm really excited about that. I'm married to Jordan, and we have 4 kiddos. Landon's 13, Brenley's 9, and Jackson and Kason are 4. So
very good. And those kids are definitely part of her story today. From a twin mama, like, you know, these twin, we just speak a different language sometimes. Like, life is just different for us, you know? So Whitney, let's go back. We've got 2 kids right now. Okay. Life is going good. And then that ultrasound, when they say there's 2 in there. So take us all the way back to life then, and we're going to get this going.
Okay. So in September 2020, we found out that I was pregnant, and we were super excited. I had some fertility struggles with the first 2. And so with these, after 4 months of trying, I was pregnant with twins, which was amazing. We were so excited. It was an incredible blessing. And so we scheduled our first ultrasound at 8 weeks. And my body felt different. And I told Jordan, I said, I think we might be having twins. And he was like, no, we're done at 3. We're done at 3. We're not having twins. And I was like, okay, well, I mean, I really think something is different, but we'll just see. And so we went into the ultrasound, and sure enough, there were 2. They said, here's 1, here's baby A, baby B. And he, of course, was shocked, doing all the guy things of, you know, we need a bigger house, we need a bigger car, all the things. Yeah, we were so excited. I'm sure you guys were in the same boat when you did. It's a shock, but it was so exciting. We were thrilled. And it was during COVID, so the rules that time were a little different. We could go for the ultrasound, but then when the doctor's appointment came right after that, I had to go by myself. He couldn't go with me. So he had to leave, and I went into the appointment. And so my doctor walked in, and I was just like bubbling excited. I was super excited. I was like, oh my gosh, you know, we worked so hard with the first 2 to get pregnant, and then now we have twins. Like, God just has a great sense of humor. And I'm kind of laughing. And I noticed her face looked kind of worried. And I was like, everything okay? And she said, we need to talk. And that didn't feel great. But she drew me a picture, and she said, these twins are called mono twins. They're incredibly rare. They are in the same sac. And I was like, okay. And she said, well, the problem with that is they can tangle so easily. Their umbilical cords can. So you only have a 50% chance of making it to viability at 24 weeks. So I was like, oh, okay. And so obviously I'm concerned at that point. She said then we would go on monitoring and, you know, just try to get them through. But she was just going through all the different risks and things, and they were going to refer me to a high risk specialist. So then, I mean, there were conversations that were had about possible selective reduction for one to be, you know, make it full term. Like, those are conversations that we had over the next couple of days. We ultimately decided we could not do that. That wasn't an option for us.
That's always a part of your story that gets me. Like, I just can't imagine having to.
And I understand the thinking medically, but for us, it wasn't, we couldn't play God, right? Like, that wasn't what we could do. No. So we went forward with it. We had decided instead that we never tell anybody, like we just didn't tell with the first pregnancies that we were pregnant until 12 weeks. And so we decided instead that we were going to share with our family and our close friends that we were pregnant and the complications that were there so that they could begin praying. That was what we decided to do. So we prayed hard over it. And at 10 weeks, we went in to the high risk specialist and we did another ultrasound. And before, where there was no dividing membrane, you could see a very clear dividing membrane on the ultrasound. They
Stop.
were separate sacks, two separate.
Mm.
So we were thrilled. We were over the top thrilled. They still went through the things of that there were risks, you know, with identical twins, there's higher risks with different things. And so they went through all that. So they decided to keep us with that high risk specialist, and we continued on through the pregnancy. And everything went well. I kept going to checkups and everything was great. And in January, we're fast forwarding to January, I was about 20 weeks pregnant and I got COVID. And then it turned into COVID pneumonia and I was hospitalized for 5 days. So during that time, I missed my 20-week appointment and went to go the next week after that. Once I was released from the hospital, I went in and they did all the ultrasounds. They were scanning for about an hour, as they usually do at 20 weeks. And the ultrasound tech went out, was getting ready to leave the room. And she said, I'm going to go get the doctor and I'll bring him back. And I said, okay, because that made me a little anxious. And Jordan was like, I'm sure it's fine. I'm sure it's just, they just want him to talk about all the things. And he came in and he said, so do you notice that you're measuring really far ahead? And I was like, I mean, I've never been pregnant with twins, so not
Right.
really.
There's two in there. Yeah.
Like, well, you're measuring, I was 22 weeks at that point, and he said, you're measuring at 36. And I was like, oh, okay. And he said, the twins have what's called twin to twin transfusion. So they share a placenta and they are not sharing well. So Jackson had about a centimeter of amniotic fluid and was anemic. And Kaysen was getting all the blood and all the fluid. He had about 15 centimeters of amniotic fluid. And his heart was pumping double the blood. So it was very enlarged. It was a serious concern.
Wow.
So they scheduled for us. They had us go to St. Louis, or well, we were going to go to St. Louis the next day. They couldn't get us in for several weeks, and that wasn't an option. So we went to Kansas City. And the next day and met with Dr. Vlastos, who is a specialist who does surgeries for people all over the United States, specifically on twin to twin transfusion. So we did the ultrasounds there and decided that surgery was our best option, to go in and separate the twins on the placenta to give them the best chance and to drain off excess amniotic fluid, all the things. So
okay. Now, is this showing?
Yes. So that's when we did. So we go in to do the surgery. And first of all, he said, we need to find an anesthesiologist who will do the surgery because no one wants to put you under when you've just been out of the hospital for COVID and with COVID pneumonia. So we found one, and she agreed to do it after I said, I'm fine. My stats look great. Whatever. And she said, it's not recommended for 6 weeks. And I said, okay, but we won't have babies here in 6 weeks. And so we signed releases. They moved the entire surgery crew, the lasers, everything to a different hospital that they thought was better set up for me. And we did the surgery. So we went in, they went in through Kaysen's side where I said he had excess amniotic fluid. So they went in there and they separated the placenta in 13 spots. And you can see on the picture you had there, there's 2 pictures that they took. You can actually see little pictures of his hands and feet on there. Those are Kaysen's hands in utero at 22 weeks. So, and the same, just incredible.
How little?
Yeah, at 22 weeks, those are inside the womb. Those were his hands and feet. So they went in, they separated the placenta in 13 places, drained 3/4 of a gallon of amniotic fluid off, and yeah. And then we knew that it was about a 50% chance that we would continue to keep both babies through the pregnancy. So we checkups over the next few weeks. Things were going really well.
Wait, you keep talking. Someone's at the door real quick. So you just keep talking. I'll be right back. Keep going.
So we were we were going to doctor's checkups. Everything was going really well. They were evening out in growth. They were evening out in blood supply. And it was just great. Everything was looking so great. They said there's really no reason that you shouldn't carry these babies to 34, 36 weeks, really pretty much full term for twins. So that was great news. We went on about that. And then on the morning of March 13th, I woke up and I had just a little bit of spotting, which can be totally normal. But the thing is, for me, I hadn't had any through my other pregnancies or through the first part of this one. So I called the hospital and they said, go ahead and just come on in. And just to be sure, I'm sure it's nothing. And I didn't think it was. I got ready, took my time, dropped my kids off, did all the things. And then we got to the hospital and I was sure they were just going to check me and be like, you're good, go on home. And as soon as I walked in to Boone's Labor and Delivery, oh, not that one yet. Not quite there. You're fine. You're fine. You're fine. So we walked in there and to Boone, and it was my water broke as soon as we walked in.
Oh gosh.
So I was like, okay, and I'm 27 weeks pregnant at this point. So I knew it was very early. I was obviously a little distressed. They said, you're just going to be here till you deliver. We can keep them in for a long time. We can run antibiotics. We can do all the things. We just need to get your labor stopped because my labor had started.
Whitney, you said that they were measuring bigger too. Was that like a good thing? Like, were they truly bigger than what they should have been?
That Kason was measured. Oh, you mean after they had the twin to twin transfusion?
Yes, yes.
So they were evening out in weights. Like Jackson got big. Kason his heart didn't look as distressed. Like they were evening. So it was really great. Like they were growing together. It was great growth. Like everything looked really, really good.
Okay. So at 27, like obviously that's super early, but we also know like they have had a great healthy measurement so far.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. Everything had looked good. So 27 weeks. So then I'm in labor. They were trying to get it stopped. I started at that point heavily bleeding, and they said, we think you have a partial placental abruption. We're going to try to get it stopped. So that continued through the day, and about 9:45 or so that night, it got significantly worse. And that at that point, the doctors, like the whole bed was filled with blood. So they decided that we needed to go right then. And Jackson dropped off the monitor about that point. So it became an emergency situation. They shut down the floor. We were rushed into a C-section. They took Jackson and Kason. They were both 2 pounds, 6 ounces, 14 inches long, about the size of an elf on the shelf. So just little bitty guys. And I don't know if you have their pictures there when they were first born, but they were Jackson. He was not breathing when he was born. Kason was. So there's Jackson. So he was in pretty much immediately.
So tiny.
Yes. And Kason was, I don't know if his picture's on there. It's probably not. But anyway, he was doing better. He cried when he was born. He's still obviously super preemie. They still intubated him. They spent 3 days pumping blood out of their heart or their stomachs and their lungs because with that full placental abruption, they had literally just been drowning in blood. So it was kind of touch and go for a few days. We had Jackson was really, really sick, and he was really struggling to just maintain his breathing, maintain his heart rate. Like he really had a lot of struggles over those first few days. Kason, not as much. He was doing pretty well. And about a week in, they both stabilized well for where they were at. And they said, honestly, at that point, they were 28 weeks, and they said they look more like 30 weekers, which may not seem like a big deal, but it was. They were doing well. They said, we're just going to let them grow. And they said, it'll be boring. It'll be like watching grass grow. And I said, I'm good with that.
Yeah.
Let's just do that.
It's not been boring the last few weeks. I'll take boring.
Take the boring. So we were prepared for boring. And so we continued over the next week. I was there during the day. Jordan went to work during the day and came in at night to get them skin to skin and snuggle them. And that's in some of those pictures there where we have them. But he was just such a rock star. He came in, he worked like crazy through all of it. And you can see there where he'd come in at night and snuggle them. You can see how tiny they are.
Now remember, Whitney, he is an entrepreneur,
Yes. So
right?
he works in commercial construction, but also has his own residential construction business.
So
So
there's kind of some flexibility, but also a stressor, because then you're not working.
yes, at that point he was working he was working in residential construction for a family friend. So it was somewhat flexible, but still he had things he needed to get done during a day. So he would go in the evening and we would kind of switch. But he was a rock star through all of that.
Yeah.
And about a week later, I guess it was when they were it was the morning of March 30th. I went in, things looked pretty good. We were just doing our normal routine. I went home and Jordan went in that evening and he came home that night and he said, Kaysen's belly is a little swollen. He just looks like he doesn't feel good. We're not really sure what's going on, but it doesn't look like he feels good. And that's the picture I was showing you when he starts to get sick. So you can see there, like he definitely looks like he does not feel good. And we weren't really sure what was going on, but he didn't have a good color. He didn't look great. So I went in the next day on March 31st that morning, and they were running tests, and they said, so we're pretty sure that he has some sort of infection. It may be septicemia, which is a blood infection, or it may be necrotizing enterocolitis. We're going to hope it's septicemia. And I remember thinking at that point that there was a little boy at our church when he was 4 who got septicemia and died. But if that's what we're hoping for, that's probably not great. But I just was like, okay, we're just going to keep going through. They had shut off all the feedings. They had started heavy antibiotics. They were growing cultures, trying to figure out what was going on. And we were there all day. We went home that night, and I got a call about 6 a.m. on April 1st saying that he was really taking a turn and getting super, super sick. They were pretty sure it was necrotizing enterocolitis, and they needed to fly him to Kansas City.
Okay, now let me ask you this right now, because there are some mamas out there that just can't fathom, and is it just like the adrenaline and things are just going fast that like you don't even have a chance to feel anything?
At that point, I think you're just going through and you're saying, okay, we just got to do this. We got to do, like, you're just like, I want to get my babies home and healthy. What do we need to do? What's next? And I was operating kind of just on a checklist. Like, okay, this is what we're doing next. We're going here. Yep. We're going to go to Kansas City. I can go to Kansas City. It'll be fine. So that's what we were doing. So we went in that morning, and the Life Flight team from Kansas City flew in, and they were getting him ready. And I did really well until they put him on the helicopter. And I couldn't go with them because they needed to have a neonatologist on there and a respiratory therapist and a nurse and all the people that were on there, which obviously was important. But it's really hard to send your premature baby flying off in a helicopter and you're still here.
Okay, and then remind me, so the other twin is still there?
Yes. So Jack staying at Boone.
Which I also hate because, again, twin mom, but separating twins, there's just something weird about it. And, hours away for one thing, different hospitals for one thing. Oh, okay.
Yes. Well, and we had decided, we were like, for right now, we're not going to push moving them both. We love the nurses at Boone. Everything is so great. They're taking such great care of him. It's, we'll do that. And we decided that Jordan was primarily going to be based at home, that he was going to take care of the older kids and work and take care of Jackson. And I was pretty much going to be in Kansas City. That's what we decided to do. Okay. So, and I both drove up to Kansas City, and that's Children's Mercy, where they took Kaysen. So they took him in there, and they said he had been a little rough on the way up there. They had to do some different breathing interventions, but they put him in the small baby unit. So this is a unit where it is really dark in there all the time, and they tried it. It's very, very quiet because it's for severely premature babies that they're trying to just mimic the womb as much as they can and grow them. So we went in there. So we spent, they knew at that point, they came in the next day, and I actually had a doctor, so they make a little circle of people when they come by each morning. And the doctor said to me, I always jumped in the circle at Boone, like I was just part of the circle. So I stepped in there at Children's Mercy, and the doctor looked at me and said, "Are you a nurse?" And I said, no, I'm his mom. That makes me the biggest stakeholder in this room. So, and we went, and that was fine. But there were 80 some babies in that NICU. You had to advocate for your kiddos, and you just had, I mean, they were great, the great nurses, but it's such a big hospital. You just had to advocate for, I know you are the medical experts, but I'm the expert on this baby. I'm with him. So we went in the small baby unit. We were there for several weeks, and they said he has necrotizing enterocolitis. We know that his intestines are really sick. Necrotizing enterocolitis is an intestinal infection that kills a lot of babies within 24 hours. So really the nurses at Boone, when they shut off his feeds and started him right away on like heavy duty antibiotics, I mean, they pretty much saved his life just doing that. Grateful for that. Then when we got there, they said he has necrotizing enterocolitis. He is sick. Right now, it looks like nothing is perforating or anything. It looks good. So we're just going to shut off his feeds, let him heal. So that was okay. A few weeks in, we realized that they tried to start feeding him again because they thought that his intestines were healthier, and he would immediately vomit nonstop, even with tiny feeds, like 1 milliliter feeds. And they realized there was a blockage at some point in his intestines, and we couldn't get any dye through. So they shut off his feeds, they said. So we think that his intestines have formed a blockage there, that they have kind of grown together with scar tissue from this disease. And we need to go in and take out a section of it. But we can't do that right now because his intestines are still really weak from the disease. And it's like wet toilet paper. If we try to go in, it's just all going to fall apart.
Wow.
The only option we have is to completely shut him off of feeds, keep him, on meds, let his body grow, and just let it heal.
And now this might be a really dumb question, but no feeds. I mean, how do you grow? Like, what does he do?
Tube feedings and TPN. Like, well, they didn't do tube feedings, and then they did TPN. It's just like essentially in an IV that just keeps you alive.
Wow.
So hungry the whole time. So his belly is swollen. He cries. He's hurting. Like they're having to suck things out of his stomach just to keep everything going. To the point where like blood is sucking out. Like he is in tremendous amounts of pain for weeks. Well, he finally starts to stabilize. We got moved out of the small baby unit to the regular, not the regular floor, but like the regular area of the NICU. And we were in there, and he started to stabilize. He actually started to look pretty good. There's a picture on there where you can see where he's kind of like half smiling on there. And he starts to actually look, not that one. There's that one. Yes. So he starts to look pretty good if you look there. Like he really, given the fact that he's in the NICU and everything he's gone through and all the things, he really looks pretty good.
And he's looking bigger
yes.
from the original pictures.
He was growing. So that was great. We were feeling really good about that, and we're going forward. And then it was right around the 1st of May, he started to get sick again. His labs started to show that he had an infection. And
so how old is he now?
So was at, let's see, I gotta do my math now. He was about at 35 weeks or 33 weeks gestation.
Wow.
So
that's a lot of weeks as a mama.
Yeah. And so he's, I think, about 4 pounds at that point.
And there's really no end in sight right now, right?
Right. So he's getting sick, and we know that his labs are not looking great. We know there's an infection, but again, we're meeting with the doctors and they're saying he's just not ready yet. Like we can't do the surgery yet. We need to give him a little more time, and we don't know where the infection is. It could be something else completely unrelated. We just know that his blood work is showing this. And so his belly blew up really big, looked like broken blood vessels, the whole thing. They did ultrasounds. They couldn't really find anything. But then, oddly enough, on the 5th of May, he started to kind of stabilize, like seemed to look pretty good. Enough so that I really hadn't left over the last few days, and I was considering going home for a day. Because I tried to go home every few days for like one night just to see the kids, see Jackson, and then come back. And I considered going home, and I said, I think I'm just going to stay one more day. But I ended up leaving the hospital to go out for supper. And I came back. I was going to go straight to the hotel. And I stopped by there on the way. I thought, well, I'll just stop by and tuck him in really quick and just, snuggle him a little bit, and then I'll go back. And as I walked onto the NICU floor, they have these big signs at the top that if there's a baby who is really struggling, their room number flashes up there, and it says like what their oxygen stats are at and everything else, so that everybody knows where to go. And as I turned the corner, Kayson's room number was flashing, and it showed 50% oxygen. And at the time, I thought they must have moved him while I was gone. Like, that can't be him. Maybe there's a higher needs baby. They need to move. They must have moved him. And so I really wasn't panicked at that point, in denial, but not panicked. And I walked down to the room. And as I walked into his room, they had a bag over his mouth, and they were breathing for him essentially and trying to do CPR. He had apparently tanked on his oxygen, and they tried to intubate him. And in order to intubate him, they needed to give him fentanyl. Well, they gave him fentanyl, and from our understanding, it got flushed too fast, and it sent him in. He essentially had a fentanyl overdose. So
Wow.
it sent him to respiratory arrest. He had what's called rigid chest, and CPR wasn't working. So they had to. So that was what I walked into.
By yourself. I mean,
yes. Yeah. So they had to try to reverse that. I had no reception really on the floor. It was weird. My phone would text, but it would not make phone calls. So I took a picture, sent it to Jordan with a text, and said, I need you to get here, like now. And that's, the general NICU. There's one, but from when I walked in with the doctors and everything, and this is where like he was at most of the time when he was there, in the unit. So I sent a picture. Then I was just standing there while they were working on him. They finally got it reversed, but they said, we need to get him intubated and his throat is swelling shut. So you need to leave, because if you don't, you'll never forget this. So go wait in the waiting room. So I did. And I'm sobbing. I am just hysterical. And I'm just praying for Jordan to get there, because like, one, I know as hard as it is for me to be there, I know he's driving 90 miles an hour. Like, I can't imagine what it's like to be halfway across the state and this is happening. So he's driving there. I'm praying for him to get there safely. I'm praying for just saying like, God, I just need Jordan to be here, because he's my safe place. Like, he's like, when everything's going crazy, like he is just the steady one. That's what I've tried to be strong all the way through this. I just need him to be here. And so I'm praying, I'm crying, all the things. And I have a lady come up and tap me on my shoulder. And she said, I was on the floor with my son on the NICU floor, and I saw you crying. And so on my way down the elevator, I was praying for you. And God told me I needed to come back and ask you your story. And I was like, oh. And she was like, I know that sounds crazy. And I said, it doesn't sound crazy. So I told her everything that we had been through. And up to this point, I had talked to lots of parents in the NICU. None of them knew what necrotizing enterocolitis was, because it's just so rare. And she said, I know exactly what that is. My son has had NEC 3 times. They gave us a 0% chance of survival, and we're going home on Tuesday. And I think God knew you needed to hear that. And I was like, okay. And we prayed together in the waiting room. And they called me. And she said, before she left, she said, oh my gosh, I don't think I even introduced myself. My name is Jordan.
Stop.
Yeah. And I was like, of course it is. What else would it be? So I went back, and they had gotten him intubated. They were rotating him between a ventilator and an oscillator. I didn't even know what an oscillator was until this point. It's like a step beyond the ventilator. Because he was struggling so much to breathe. They put him on one, his breathing dropped. If his oxygen rate dropped. If they put him on the other, then it was fine. But then his carbon dioxide, I think was what it was, got really high, and so it was dangerous. And so they had to just keep rotating in between these machines. And Jordan got there and came in, and they said, we believe that his intestines have ruptured. We believe there's a perforation. He's too sick to take him into surgery right now, like his body. just won't make it. He's just too sick. There's really nothing we can do right now. So for the next few hours, we had the chaplain come up. We prayed over him. For the next few hours, we watched as his body turned gray. And we would watch the doctors come over and look at they pulled blood gases every hour, and they would look at him, and everybody would run around, and then they would just drop their shoulders and walk away. And a few hours in, the doctor came in and he said, Whitney, there's nothing else we can do. We're going to give him morphine. We're going to keep him comfortable, but look at his body. His organs are shutting down. There's nothing else we can do. And I really think that I had been strong up to that point. Like, there had been a lot, and I like to think that I had just rolled through it. But that about broke me. And I ran to the bathroom because I was physically sick. And I sat there in the bathroom and I told God, I just said, like, if this is what your will is, then you take him to heaven. But if it's not, then make this a testimony of how great you are and the things you can do, because nobody in there thinks that you can do this. And I know you can.
Amen. I got to get a tissue.
So I went back into the room, and they asked me if I wanted a blanket, to make me comfortable. I said, nope, we got to keep working on him. And they said there's Whitney, there's a 99.8% chance he's dying. Like,
that is a word.
Yes, like that is scientifically backed. The statistics. I mean, he is in septic shock right now.
And can I ask you one real quick question? Would this, going way back to in the womb, would this have been the same baby that you had a discussion about?
Actually, Jackson was. He was the smaller one. Payson was the stronger one all the way through until this.
Interesting.
Yes. With the twin transfusion, that was hard on his heart. And kind of going a little off track with that, when we were at the hospital, there were 4 twins that had been part of a twin-to-twin transfusion duo. He was the only surviving one, that recipient twin. So it is hard on your heart when that happens. But it didn't have to do with this. We found out later that he actually is a short gut baby. He had a third of the small intestine he was supposed to. They think that could have possibly had to do with it.
Okay.
Just hard to know. So so we're going through, and we're just waiting that night. So we're just waiting for something to change, and we're just praying over him. And finally, about 7:00, they sent one of the residents in, and he said, hey, so his numbers look good enough that we can try to take him into surgery. You need to know there's only a 50% chance he's coming out of surgery. And I was like, what? I mean, this is what we've got. And
that sounds better than anything so far.
Absolutely. And so we prayed over him, and we just literally said, like, God, he's yours. He's always been yours. Like, he's yours. That's what we're.
You have had a pretty strong faith even before this, right?
I did, but not even anything compared to like.
Okay.
But yes, I had a strong faith, but I mean, this is, people say, like, how are you just giving it to God? I'm like, because I can't do anything. This is him, And so we sat in the waiting room. We prayed for hours. They came out and said that he had made it through the surgery, and he had an intestine that had ruptured and formed essentially it formed like a pocket of infection, and all of his intestines had wrapped around it, trying to protect his body from it. And it was literally probably less than an hour from bursting. And so they removed that. They removed several centimeters of his intestine, and they created an ostomy. And so that is him after surgery coming out. You can tell, obviously, he's still pretty darn sick. And they said they put us in a room that's kind of like a bereavement room. We had watched a baby die there the night before. when everything was going wrong. We watched the butterfly go up on the door after all the family had been in there. They put you in that room so that you have some privacy and you have your own nurse and all those things. So we spent 10 days in that room. And he finally started to stabilize, which was great. And we kind of just went through the next few weeks with slowly getting better. During that time, Jackson was released. And about the same time, Kaysen started to get sick again. So you can see the picture there. Jackson is in the red and blue, and then Kaysen you can see right there. So you can see like he has been healthy, he's been looking great, and then he starts to look sick. There's actually one I think you had where it was him and he had a funny face. It was Kaysen. It may not be there. It's no big deal. But so he had done the surgery and he was getting better, but then started to get sick again. So they were going to go in and do kind of an exploratory surgery, but try to reconnect him. He had had the ostomy for several weeks at this point. It was like I guess about 6 weeks because it was like mid-June. And his surgery ended up getting delayed. He was getting really sick again. And I told the doctors, I said, I really think he has a stricture again, which is where the intestines close off. Like he's doing the same things he did before. I really don't want we can't go through this again. Like we can't. And I was probably pretty adamant. And we went into another surgery and sure enough, he did. And they resected that amount of small intestine, but were able to reconnect him. So that's the one where he came out of surgery and he has the bandage right here. That one. Yep. So that was when he came out, when they had reconnected him. So at that point, this is backtracking a little bit, but it's backtracking a lot. When I was in labor, they told me all the things that could possibly go wrong with the twins, pretty much till they were 18. And one of the things they said is that they said they'll have to have breast milk. They cannot process formula. Their bodies just aren't able to do that. So I had not planned on breastfeeding. I said, no, like I'm just going to do formula. I'd said that beforehand. And it's my last two, it's twins. I don't want to do that.
It is so much work.
Yes. So I was like, I'm not going to do it. Well, then when they were born that early, I was like, I produced well with the first two. If they have to have breast milk, I'm not going to take milk from a milk bank when I know I can produce. So I did. Well, throughout this process, probably, I guess I actually first found it about a week after we got to Children's Mercy. It was mid-April. And I had noticed a small, like pea-sized spot in my right breast when I was pumping for them. And, at first it was like, well, it's probably a clogged milk duct. It's probably, all these different things. And I finally mentioned to my doctor and we thought it was, maybe mastitis, something left over from it. So we did several rounds of antibiotics. Well, when Kaysen came out of this surgery, the spot had started to get larger and I knew that something wasn't right. And so I went in to her and she said, I really think that's what it is. There's nothing, you don't have any external signs of anything that's wrong. There's, everything seems to be okay. It's just that spot. And so they scheduled an ultrasound, but it wasn't for a week and a half. They really weren't that concerned. And so I went in on a Friday and in July, and I had an ultrasound done. And as the nurse started to do the ultrasound, or the ultrasound tech did, she said, do you have a family history of breast cancer? And I said, well, I have a couple of aunts that have had it when they were older. I'm 34. And she was like, okay, well, I'm going to go get the radiologist. So, my stomach feels, it's just in knots. Yeah. So he comes in and he looked and he said, I don't know. I really think that probably is just mastitis. I don't think it's an issue, all the things. Well, she's standing behind him like this. And so she said, do you think you want to do a mammogram? And so I was like, and she was like, we can get you in. This is Friday at like 4:30. So everyone just wants to go home.
Yeah.
Like, we can get you in. I'll have them start the machine back up. We'll get you in. So they did a mammogram and you could see these calcifications on the mammogram. And he looked at it and he said, I still think those are just milk calcifications. I don't think it's anything to be concerned about. And I said, okay, that sounds good. And she said, if you decide you want a biopsy, just call us. And I was like, okay.
And
he
is
was
the doctor, is that your regular doctor?
a radiologist. So this is a radiologist that's telling me
Okay.
everything fine. The radiology tech is like, if you decide you want anything, just let us know. So we go to Kansas City that weekend, Jordan and I do, and I'm on Google, and Jordan's like, don't get on Google. Everything on Google leads to cancer and death. Just don't do it.
Yep. You're gone in a week.
Okay. So I got on there. Well, I'm looking at these pictures of calcifications, and the ones that look exactly like what I had are a malignant formation. And he was like, Whitney, you can't, like, he's a radiologist. He knows what he's talking about.
And we can't deal with this.
Right. And we're in Kansas City. And I was like, okay, yeah, that's fine. So we go home on Sunday night, and I was going to turn around and come back Monday afternoon to spend some time at home with the kids on Monday morning, and then come back to Kansas City Monday afternoon. And I get a call a late Monday morning from Jordan's stepmom, who is the radiation safety officer at Boone. And I can tell she's been crying. And the radiation tech had gone to another radiologist and said, I'm really concerned about this. And she took it to Leisha and said, these are, I'm really concerned about this. I'm 95% sure Whitney has breast cancer. And I said, and so she was telling me this, and I said, well, like, how bad do they think it is? And she said, well, your lymph nodes are swollen, so they don't know about spread. And I, okay, so should I not go to Kansas City? And she said, you need to come in like this afternoon for a biopsy. So I called Jordan, and he came home. We're of course both pretty upset at this point, and I'm kicking myself thinking, like, why didn't I address this sooner? But honestly, I had a baby who was desperately sick.
Yeah, it's not about us, right?
Right. So we went in, we did the biopsy, and we had the longest 2 days of our entire life, I think. And she called on the 14th of July and said, you do have breast cancer. The good news is it is contained in the milk ducts. It's essentially a stage 0. So if you go have surgery, she said it's a very aggressive form, like on a scale of 1 to 9, they rate it, it's a 9. But if you have this surgery, you take it out, you should be good. And I was like, okay, we've done so many things. Like, I've got this.
Yeah, take my boobs. I don't care.
Yep, do it. And and I will never forget. Jordan's gonna be like, why did you share that? But
do it.
Yeah, I turned around and I told her what they were recommending. I said, they were recommending a bilateralectomy and then I can do reconstruction and and whatever. And he kind of smiled and chuckled, and I said, what is funny? Because nothing has been funny over 2 days. And he said, babe, I'm more of a tush guy anyway.
Oh, yes.
Great.
I love it.
Great. So we were laughing, and it was a good day. So which is kind of crazy to say it's a good day when you're diagnosed with breast cancer, but given everything, we were just like, it's praise God, we can do this.
It's almost like a distraction that you needed, kind of.
Yes. So we were like, okay, we're going to do this. So we scheduled surgery a few weeks from then. And they had gone and put dye in ahead of time to see what lymph nodes it would drain to, so that they could test 3 lymph nodes during the surgery and just make sure. But they said, if everything's contained to the ducts, it shouldn't be in your lymph nodes. That should be unrelated, probably just your body responding to the sickness and trying to fix it. And so we went in to do the surgery. And I woke up after the surgery, and they had taken the 3 lymph nodes, and they had actually, I think, only took 2 at first, and those were totally normal. They did the sections during it, and they were totally normal. The third one had a little bit draining to it, but looked completely normal. It wasn't enlarged. And so she was like, I don't even know if I need to take that. Decided last minute to take it, even though it was completely normal looking, and there was a tiny bit of cancer on the inside, which meant that it wasn't contained to the ducts.
Okay.
The next week and a half, we knew that there was spread. We just didn't know how much. And at that point, she decided to take another layer of lymph nodes just to be sure. So a week and a half later, I got the results back that everything else was clear. It was contained to that 1 lymph node. I had a tumor that was 1.7 millimeters that had actually spread. It was localized in the breast, but then there was DCIS, which is when your cancer is in the milk ducts wrapped around it, which is why the biopsy showed that. So in the grand scheme of things, it was super aggressive. It was triple positive, estrogen receptor positive, progesterone positive, and HER2 positive. And HER2 is how fast things grow and spread. So if you have 2 or more copies on a cell, you're considered HER2 positive. People normally just have 1 copy. I had an average of 9 on every cell. So it was telling it to grow and spread very, very fast.
Wow.
The incredible blessing in that is that there were a lot of treatments that I knew were ahead for me with that because it was so aggressive, and I had vascular invasion where it got in my bloodstream. So while it wasn't actively growing anywhere else, it could be. We needed to do a lot of preventative things. But it was treatable, and it was stage 1A because of all the treatment options that were out there, which is just an incredible blessing because that is unheard of with a cancer that's that aggressive.
Yeah.
So again, I know it sounds crazy, but I'm feeling incredibly blessed at this moment. Like, this is amazing. And so a few weeks later, I started chemo. And so I think that's on there on one of the pictures. But so we started chemo, and so that's the name of the boys. And I went in. You'll see that one's a little bit after some of the others, but if you see the one, there's one with Jordan and I had the first treatment.
Oh, yeah. Well, maybe this one?
Yep, that one. So that's at the first treatment. I hadn't lost my hair then. I knew it was coming. There was a 10% chance my hair was never going to grow back, but I ultimately was just like, I'd like to say that I was like, God, just do what you're going to do. But I didn't. I said, I want to raise my babies. Like, that's what I want. Just please let me raise my babies. And there was nothing on my list that I wouldn't do to do that. So we started into chemo. As you can see there, they have my kids. That's Landon and Brenly and Jordan and Jackson. And Kayson's still in the hospital at this point in Kansas City. He's still there. And I'm starting chemo back here. We had a community that was incredibly supportive. They were amazing. Everybody stepped up and helped, and it was incredible. We were so blessed. But we started into chemo. We went to bring Kaysen home. We had the only thing that was holding him up is that he really wouldn't eat, which fair because he's had so many GI issues. He just would not eat at all. And so he had been on tube feedings, but to take him home, we had to put a G tube in. So we did that. And then my hair started falling out while we were in Kansas City, getting ready to bring him home. And that was after the first round of chemo, and I did 5 more rounds. And then followed it up with radiation. And that was at the beginning of 22. And really I'm trying to think of what else was there. I mean, we were told with Kaysen, that's when Kaysen came home from the NICU. It was a really long time, but he came home, and we were told that even though he was alive, and that it was just too devastating with neck, right? Like, there were too many things. Cognitively, he would have a lot of issues, motor wise, like just lots of things he would struggle with, significant. Like, they were just talking about how devastating it was. Like, we had multiple doctors tell us this, and just say like well, there's no reason he should be alive, but essentially be lucky he's alive. These are all things that he will never do. And you can see there's Jackson laughing, and that's Kaysen with him. And they are about maybe 6 months ago, we went in for developmental clinics at Boone every year, and every 6 months at first, and then every year. And they were released from developmental clinic because they are both like in the 95th percentile on a lot of, and like, we're working on a few gross motor skills, but and it's incredible.
Unreal.
That's them. That's the boy who they weren't sure would walk and climb and everything else. And that's Jackson in the front, that's Kaysen in the back. That's both of them together there. They are incredible blessings. And
and then I didn't show this one.
Yes. Oh yeah. That was when I finished chemo. That was the last day. I really don't have hair there. That's my wig. I just had a really good wig guy.
I
But
wondered.
yes.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
looks identical.
It made me a wig, and it was, yeah, it was really close to my normal hair, but
So you're telling me from the moment that two were in your stomach and a doctor was like, you know, we might think about just keeping one in there because here's the odds, to then, what did that say? 186 days?
yes,
Like I cannot even fathom having, I mean, essentially the family is just ripped apart for that amount of time. And you're just, I don't even know, surviving on fumes at this point, not alone. I mean, let alone trying to then go through all of the medical things for you. And so you're telling me all of this happens, and through it all, at the very end, at age 4 now, did you say 4?
therefore,
You would never know
yes.
that that was their past.
And interestingly enough, I just thought about this now. Today is actually their due date. Like they were supposed to be due today,
Wow.
but they were actually, so in theory, they should have been 4 today. So
Okay. Okay.
yeah,
I just, my sister's a NICU nurse, and I truly don't know how they do it. I just do not.
they're incredible, incredible people. They really are. And yeah, we just had, I am, we have all been so blessed with the people around us, and just God has been so, so incredibly good. And my husband, I mean, all the way through it, he was the rock star. He was the MVP that was running back and forth with trying to go to Kansas City to see Case and keeping up with Jackson here, like getting the kids where they needed to be, going to work when I was supposed to stay home with them for the first year because they just couldn't go to daycare, and not with Cason's feeding tube and everything. And then we found out I had cancer.
Right.
So he stayed home for a year, worked evenings and weekends, took them to all the therapies, all the doctor's appointments. Like he's amazing. And just through it all, I mean, God just, he gave our family such incredible strength. And he was just every step of the way showed up over and over and over and over. And I even think about like with my breast cancer, I would never want those babies to be born early, never. But if they had not been born that early, I would not have pumped.
Oh, yeah.
You just look back and so many pieces connect.
And
You-
that's,
it-
I think that's one thing I'll never forget. Some people were just like, she does not deserve this, and you hear that some like, if God is good, then why would he allow some of these things to happen? But then what you're saying is through that plan, that process, it was almost his hand guiding you and protecting you
Absolutely.
because maybe you wouldn't be here had any of that happened. And clearly his plan is working out just fine.
And it's been incredible. And we've been so blessed to be able to share that with other people. Um, and even other people who are struggling with their faith, of just how incredible he is. There have even been moms that I have talked to who have been in a similar situation, who are like, with similar struggles with their pregnancy, and saying like, I'm considering terminating this one. I had that conversation with mom before and said like, I know your faith is struggling right now, but just give him a chance. Like, just give him a chance. And like, there's one mom in particular I'm thinking of who has healthy babies. She has totally healthy babies. So, yeah.
That it's incredible. I have to think about when you were talking about the mom that came to you probably at one of the lowest points in the hospital when you were alone. And
Mm-hmm.
it was like she had that gut feeling. We call it a gut feeling, but likely it's the Holy Spirit like nudging you and pushing you. And some people ignore that. Some people are like, yeah, but I don't want to, or I don't want to mess with her right now. She's crying, like just leave her alone. But she had that call to do that, and she did it. And so you probably, remember her, and now it's almost like it's your time. And
Yes,
you've done that when you have that urge, or you see that mama that also needs the word of encouragement. Now it's your time to shine and share your testimony, which is what you're doing today.
absolutely.
So let's end with this, because there's a lot of people out there that are going to watch this and maybe not this exact situation, you know, maybe they've got that diagnosis or they're dealing with the NICU family or whatever it might be. There's something that they can commiserate with your family or with your story. And you said through it all, there were low points that all you could do was give it to God, right? Because that's kind of been the testimony. The commonality between all of these is it's in the pit, it's in the rock bottom that people find their Jesus. And so just maybe end it with some sort of word of encouragement, or what would you tell that mama, grandma, anyone out there?
I would tell them to honestly just dig deep, keep your eyes on Jesus, just put your feet down, root down strong, and don't listen to the things that are in your ear, the whisperings that things won't get better, that you're not good enough for this, because that doesn't come from Jesus. That
Amen.
comes. Keep your eyes on him and keep moving forward, because he's good and he will lead you where you need to be.
Amen. Clearly, 4 years later, and you couldn't imagine in any other way, I'm sure.
So,
amazing, Whitney. Thank you for taking the time.
yes.
I appreciate you.
Yes,
And,
they me.
yes, and now she's doing God's work at a church. I mean, that's kind of a tough transition. I can only imagine, like from public education to.
Yeah, I taught 17 years, but I had felt God like telling me that I should make that move, but I was like, no, that's not really what you're saying. You know, I have a great retirement, I have summers off, I have all these different things, which you and I both know it's not really summers off, but it is. You know, all these things that I have, that doesn't make any sense. That's not really what you're saying. And then finally I was like, okay, just tell me where you want me to be. And again, like he has all the way through our journey, there were just little God winks here and there and here and there that said, this is where.
God's plan is always the best. Don't mess with it.
Absolutely. It's been amazing.
Oh, Whitney. Okay. Hang tight. Thank you guys so much for watching. Share this out if at all possible. We would love that. I don't know that Jennifer says, such a beautiful story of who God is. Thank you, Jennifer. God is good. You are amazing. Mamas truly know their babies over any medical professional. There is something, Amber, to that. Amber, you have got to come on this page and share your story too. There is just something about a mama's intuition. And again, maybe that Holy Spirit talking to us, but you have to advocate, like you said. So good. Thank you guys for joining. We'll actually be back here on Thursday of this week for another testimony, 2 in 1 week. I mean, who thought of it? So join me then. We'll talk to you guys later. Have a blessed day.